Hi, my name is Iannielli, and I am male to female transgender. And I am trying my best to cope. I am suffering from a lot of medically related issues that is affecting my thinking. And being that I worry quite a bit, it's it's affecting how I perceive things. Um, I struggle with depression, bipolar disorder, and I've been in the hospital many times because of it. I also am male to female transgender, as I indicated. I've known for a long time, basically my whole life. When I was 3, that's when I started to experiment with wearing my sister's dresses. I did it all in secrecy, and pretty much that remained a big part of my life all throughout. There would be times where I would not do it. You know, I tried to, I guess, trying to control the way I thought, and I figured if I think a different way, that the cross-dressing could, be stopped. So, despite the fact that I was attempting to stop and control my feelings, I always managed to find myself dressing again in women's clothes or girls' clothes. And it is something that became a major theme in my life personally. It seemed when I wore girls' clothes and then eventually women's clothes, I felt more comfortable with myself. The problem was that I had to live in secrecy. I couldn't tell anybody. Plus, I came from a family dynamic where both my mom and dad had their own worries and concerns. My mom dealt with mental illness for a good part of her adult life, and she was in and out of psychiatric hospitals many times. And my father worked in a very stressful professional career as an iron worker, and he saw a lot of tragedy in the business. He was working on the Verrazano Bridge when I was just a little baby, and he experienced losing a friend, co-worker on the Verrazano Bridge. They had just finished their conversation, and then they went to work in their respective areas on the bridge, and they worked in close proximity of each other. And shortly after their conversation, and they started to work on the where they were directed to, my father heard someone screaming, and he turned around and he saw his friend actually slipped, and he was hanging on desperately. And my father ran to try to grab him and pull him up. The problem was that my father weighed about 135 pounds, and his friend weighed over 200 pounds. So my dad was struggling to try to pick him up, and my father was starting to go in the direction that he was being pulled in. And if it wasn't for the actions of another iron worker, an Indian iron worker from the Canadian reservation, my father would have gone over too. But the iron worker pulled my father back, saving his life. Unfortunately, my father couldn't hold on to his friend, and he witnessed him fall into the water below, and he died instantly. They knocked off the work. They knocked off for the workday because of the tragedy, which they always do. And so my dad was devastated by the experience. So he needed to address that, and he wound up going to a bar. On his way home, he stopped at the bar, and he spent at least 3 or 4 hours there just drinking his sorrows away, or trying to. And then sadly that became a problem because he started to develop a dependence on it to heal him and anesthetize his pain. And he became an alcoholic in the process. So both my parents had their issues, and my father also dealt with depression. So when I was growing up, I did my own thing also, where I was hiding how I truly felt about myself. I couldn't talk to anybody. I had 2 sisters, and I really didn't talk to them. You know, there was an age gap with me and my middle sister. The age gap was 2 years. I was born in 1961, my middle sister in 1963, and my younger sister was born in 1967, so there was a 6-year age gap between myself and my younger sister. But my 2 sisters, once they were growing up, they had to take a lot of responsibility on, since my dad was working in a very stressful career, and my mom was in and out of hospitals. So my 2 sisters were forced to take on the responsibilities of maintaining the household when my dad was working the day and my mom was in the hospitals. So before school started, they would cook eggs, scrambled eggs, and cereal we would eat. I, for some reason, I did what I had to do in, dealing with that situation between my mom being very sick and being in psych hospitals, and my dad, going into a very stressful job each day. So I could make myself like grilled cheese sandwiches and soups. So we kind of ate whatever we liked. And then my dad would go to the hospital to visit my mom, and he would sometimes bring us White Castles, the burgers and French fries, but we couldn't eat that every night, so we tried to cook at home also. But it was a very difficult time. Plus, I was dealing with what was going on in my own head, and feeling like I didn't belong or fit in. And I knew I felt different, but I really didn't know how to go about seeking proper help. So I just did what I could to survive. And one of the things that I gravitated towards was cross-dressing and dealing with that. that was when I felt most happiest. I wasn't into wearing basic men's or boys' clothing. I didn't find it helpful. I wore what I was supposed to wear, but I wasn't happy about it. So I had to just, you know, deal with it as best I could. And I would sometimes wear the female clothing underneath my male clothing when I was in junior high school, college, and in the working, when I was working after graduating college. So it was a big part of my life, and I had to be careful because I didn't want to expose the women's clothing underneath my male attire. So when I was working in the accounting profession, I used to wear a jacket, and I wore it all the time because I had a white shirt or a pink shirt or blue shirt, but I was always concerned that somebody could see the outline of the female clothing or the or the straps that you usually wear, like if you're wearing a bra or something like that. So I was more comfortable just hiding it, not revealing it to anybody. Actually, I had no choice. I had to do that. And I had to kind of feel somewhat comfortable, and the only thing that made me comfortable was when I wore feminine clothing. When I was home and I had some alone time or hiding, I would find a room or in my bedroom where I could dress up. And then when everybody was out and I was the only one home, I would go downstairs to the living room and, look at myself in the mirror. And I felt better about my life when I was dressing up. But that was, I couldn't go out dressed like that. So I had to hide that, and I had to kind of bury my feelings, my emotions in addressing that. So it affected me. And I suspect that I struggled with depression even though I wasn't diagnosed with it. So I couldn't even explain, if I did have the good fortune of seeing someone, I couldn't explain what was going on with me. I thought that I was like the only one doing this because I never had anybody I could talk to about it. And it was difficult, you know. So I don't know. You go into shopping malls, you go into retail stores, and the first thing that I would see is the women's department. So as I got older, I would find myself, going through the dresses and all of the undergarments and swimsuits. And I would feel kind of happy and excited when I got to do that. when I went into the men's department, it wasn't the same. I noticed, like, just walking through the dress section, how many choices you had, and, you know, seeing all the beautiful designs and colors and sizes. Some were shorter than others, some were much longer. I kind of preferred the shorter dresses. And, you know, I wasn't making a lot of money. So, you know, when I earned enough, I would go to the mall on a bus by myself when I was old enough. And I would look for the most reasonably priced dress. And if I had enough money to pay for it, I would buy it. You know, obviously I tried it on. But the problem was, what I used to do was I would have like some men's clothes that I wasn't intending to buy, and I would conceal the women's clothes. So when I went into a dressing room, the attendant would see that I just had the men's clothes but not realize what I had underneath. I was pretty good at concealing it. So when I went into the dressing room, I would put the men's clothes to the side because I wasn't even going to try wearing them anyway. And then I would try on 2 or 3 dresses and see which one fit me the best. You know, I was just learning dress size and how I should decide. And obviously I wanted the dress to be a little more looser than too tight. So when I found a dress that fit me right and I felt happy wearing it and looking in the mirror and seeing that it was nice on me, despite the fact that I had short hair, I would go return the dresses that I wasn't going to be buying and would buy the one that I liked. And for some reason, despite my shyness, I was able to go to the checkout counter and I wouldn't say anything. If by chance the cashier asked me, you know, something to, you know, I remember a few times they said, "Oh, what a beautiful dress. You must be buying this for your sister or girlfriend." And, you know, I just played along, you know. It wasn't like that often, just in some instances. But other instances, it was just a purchase exchange and not money, not a conversation. And I was excited when I was out of the store with my dress in hand in the bag, and I felt like a sense of excitement that I never had buying men's clothes. And that was like an addiction for me, because the more I felt good about it, the more when I had the chance financially to go out and buy, I would. And, you know, me, I could spend hours just walking through the women's department. When I bought with my mom men's clothes, you know, I didn't want to be in there more than 15 minutes. And it was horrible for me, but I couldn't tell my mom, I couldn't tell my dad, I couldn't tell my sisters, I couldn't tell my friends or my teachers or anybody for that matter. So I did everything in secrecy, trying my best not to be caught or reveal what was going on. And as I got older, it intensified because I had more money to spend. So I would now, instead of buying just one dress, I would buy a couple of dresses, and before you knew it, I was like accumulating my collection. At some point, when I had too many dresses, I had to purge some of them because I didn't have any room to put them all in. And I was deathly afraid if my mom went through my closet and saw the dresses, I was afraid she'd ask me what I'm doing with these dresses. So, I was like a nervous wreck, trying to deal with my feelings about buying, but also worrying that I might be caught in the process. So I I wound up, you know, doing it on several occasions where after accumulating a good amount of feminine clothing, I would wind up, giving a lot to charity. So it was very strange, what was happening. I didn't understand it. I couldn't explain it. I felt all alone. I felt isolated. I felt depressed. I had nobody to talk to about it. I didn't even fit in with people. I didn't feel comfortable around girls or guys. And I was very quiet. I did good in school. I wasn't a genius or anything, but I strived to do the best I could. I maintained decent grades, and I enjoyed math and science. I thought one day I'd pursue a career that involved that, whether it be engineering or, well, I grew up where computers weren't used, so I never connected with like computer science or anything like that. But I wanted to do something in the math or science discipline, and I also thought maybe engineering might be my strong suit. So I focused on that, math and science. I obviously also focused on the academics, all my courses, language, English, history, my uh, science courses I liked was biology, chemistry, physics, and when I was in junior high school, I took earth science, and I enjoyed that learning, and I enjoyed learning about math. And at times with math, I had trouble figuring out the word problems, but after a while, I started to get the hang of it. And my mom was very good. She would sit with me when she wasn't in the hospital or anything, and she would help me do some of my homeworks. So, I felt comfortable. That was a good time when I bonded with my mom. My dad was very tired after the work day, so he'd just come home, eat dinner, watch maybe an hour of television, and then he'd go to sleep. So I didn't really have that same bond with my father that I had with my mom. And in a way, I felt, sad about that. But I knew my dad was in a difficult profession. But my dad and I did have some bonding time in my youth because I was involved in Little League Baseball. So my dad would always drive me to the games. And eventually he became a coach also. Not on my teams, but he did coach. So we would both go to the, in Brooklyn I played. So we would go to Canarsie, and it was fun. I enjoyed it. I was pretty good at baseball because in a way I wanted to prove that I could do what the boys did, despite the fact that I didn't kind of relate to them. So it was good for me to be involved and I became a little bit more social and also became somewhat popular because I had the talent to play, and I would never have come into the Little League program if it wasn't for my neighbor's brother. Um, she introduced me to her brother, and he was a coach. And he would see me and my dad sometimes having a catch. And he came by and he said, are you interested in playing in a league? And I said, I'm not sure. I'm kind of shy, and I don't know how I would be integrated into it. But he kind of convinced me that I should consider it. So I did, and actually I found something that I liked. I enjoyed playing the game, and I started to bond with some of my teammates. And I even won trophies, first place trophy, but also um, an individual trophy. My coach, before I even knew I was getting the trophy, I knew we were getting the first place trophy, but he took me aside and he said, "Oh, there's a surprise for you." So I was wondering what he meant by that, and it was I won for most improved player, so I was pretty happy. I even have the trophies right now. Um, I maybe I'll get them. I'll be right back, but I'll show you what I mean. I love you. Hold on. See, this is my trophy. This was 1970, long time ago, and this was our first place trophy. It was Little Flower Baseball League, American League playoff champs, and I played for the Indians. I don't know if you could read that, but yeah, 1970. And then my other trophy was this one, and I don't know if you can read it, but it says most improved player. So I was very proud, and you could say that the fact that I kept these all these years still brings me back to those days. So I still have them, and it is something that I treasure, and I'm very grateful that I was recognized for my talents and playing for a first place team. So I played baseball for several years with the anticipation of playing in my teenage years going forward to like in the 15, 16, 18 range, 17. But unfortunately, I got an injury. I started to develop hip problems with my hip, so I couldn't like run the bases comfortably. So unfortunately, I had to stop playing the game. So I tried to pick up on another sport, not competitively, but just to get out and doing something. So I went into swimming, and that was something I enjoyed. The only thing that I started to get jealous in a way, because when I went swimming, I had like these baggy short type bathing suits because I refused to wear those skimpy bathing suits that were short, and they just, it looked like the bottom of a bikini. It was weird the way it looked, and I didn't feel comfortable with that. So I wore the baggy shorts. But I was jealous when I saw the girls wearing bikinis or those one-piece swimsuits. And so in a way I got jealous about that. And when I could, I would buy a couple of bathing suits, women bathing suits, and I would wear it at home and fantasize. But yeah, it was difficult growing up with the feelings I had and then concealing them, not telling anybody. When I went to college, I didn't have time to think about cross-dressing. I didn't really do much cross-dressing in college because I was too focused on my academics and trying to get the best grades I could. And I studied engineering. I went to Nassau Community College for 2 years, and I got an engineering science degree. And then I transferred to Virginia Tech in Blacksburg, Virginia, with the intention of studying mechanical engineering. And I got through the first year. Unfortunately, I only had mediocre grades. When I was at Nassau, I had a B average. When I went to Virginia Tech in the 1.5 year I attended there, I could only make a C average. So there was definitely, between being away from home for the first time and going into the rigors of upper level courses, it was too much. I couldn't deal with them. I couldn't deal with being away from my family, my parents, and also being alone and trying to do the best I could in very difficult courses. So I spoke to my parents when I called them, and I said, I don't know if this is the right field for me, even though I really wanted to be an engineer. So I decided maybe I should come home. And for a year, I just worked. I worked in a warehouse with the intention of going back to school. So my parents were very good. They worked with me, and they even helped me financially with college. I'm very grateful for that. And I decided I was going to go to Hofstra, which was a private school, not like Nassau, which was a state university school. So obviously the tuition was a lot higher. But I went there for accounting. So as many courses that transferred over, they were in a different discipline. So basically I had to focus on accounting, and I had to take classes in the summertime to catch up, so to speak. I took accelerated courses like in intermediate accounting, and I got through the program with a B average. So I maintained a B average at Nassau, C average at Virginia Tech, and back to a B average at Hofstra University. So I wasn't a genius by any stretch, but I did maintain the best grades that I could, and I did study hard. The other thing that I was upset about was that I couldn't present myself even in college where you're older, because I lived at home, with the exception of going to Virginia Tech for a year and a half. And I didn't feel comfortable, even if I had the chance to dress up in public in women's clothing. I didn't even know that you could try to blend in and, do what felt most comfortable for you. So the only thing I did was I would dress underneath my male clothing and make the most of it, or make the best of the situation. And once I started working in the accounting field, I got too caught up in working and trying to take the CPA exam and passing that again I kind of drifted away from cross-dressing again. And it seemed for a while I wasn't really into the cross-dressing, or it didn't have the same attraction to me as it did in the past when I was younger. But it obviously didn't go away. It was like dormant. And after getting indoctrinated into the workforce, I eased back into the cross-dressing again, buying clothes and trying them on, making sure they fit. And I would wear, again, underneath my men's attire, this time business suits, suit and tie, white shirt, pink shirt, blue shirt. And I had, dress underneath, women's underwear underneath. And that's how I felt comfortable, And it was my way of expressing how I felt inside. So that was important to me. I didn't really have any experiences dating. I didn't date anybody. I knew I wasn't gay. I knew I was more interested in women, though I had trouble socializing with them. I never had attraction to guys at all. But women I did, but I didn't know how to relate. I didn't know how to have the confidence that I needed to even be noticed by a woman. Plus, I didn't feel good about my appearance. I didn't feel comfortable. I didn't like the clothes I wore. So that was working against me. And I just didn't feel comfortable. So I kind of avoided any contact with girls and even guys too. I basically was a loner. And it had to do a lot with how I felt. I didn't feel good about myself, and I kind of isolated myself. But when I was in high school, I'll go back again, I was fortunate to come upon a math teacher who was also the coach of the cross-country team. And I'll never forget, because I was going through a depression, and I was planning out it's hard to say, but I was literally thinking about overdosing. And it was weird because I was thinking about doing it on the weekend. And on Thursday of that week, I'm trying to remember if it was a Wednesday or a Thursday, and I don't remember. But I knew it was coming closer to the end of the week and what I was planning on the weekend. And then Wednesday or Thursday, the math teacher saw me on the lunch line and he said, I am the coach of a cross-country team here, and I think you might be interested. So I was, surprised because he approached me, recruiting me, and I said, I don't really run. And he said, that's okay, we'll train you. So I said, okay, and I went to his office when he said, come at a certain time, I'll introduce you to the other guys. And so I did, and as he said, he did introduce me to the guys, and I started to feel good because I was being introduced. And not that I was very talkative or anything, but it gave me the opportunity to be amongst peers because I was desperately isolating myself. And I thought this would be a healthy outlet. So it worked out good. I ran for the team from sophomore year to my senior year. And I won awards for running. I wasn't in the top because I always ran for the JV team, junior varsity. I wasn't good enough to make the varsity team. But the coach realized that I really was putting my best effort into that. And it helped me, gave me confidence. I learned discipline because we had tough workouts. And cross-country races are over 3 miles long. So it was good for me mentally and physically. And I felt very healthy in doing it. And I also got the opportunity to go to summer camp for the running. It was a running camp, but we would work, my fellow teammates and myself would work in the kitchen, and we would be like assisting the cooks and also being waiters at the tables for the camp kids. And it was good for me. It was a good experience, and it gave me the opportunity to get more acquainted with my teammates. Plus, we would get into the running routine, and also I got to learn how to water ski. So it was a lot of fun. It was good. I got away, you know. I was away it was a summer camp sleepover. It was in Connecticut, and we lived in Long Island. So we were quite a distance away from where we lived, and I was away from my family for a couple of months, and it was a good experience. So I'll always remember that because my coach saved my life in a way, and taught me to become more focused, driven, and put goals, set goals for myself, and that helped me with my college career. When I was working, I was very disciplined. I focused on the CPA exam. My parents even paid for the course that would help us develop the skills and the best strategy for taking the exam. And it was a good idea because I did pass the first two parts on my first attempt. It took me a little while to pass law and auditing. I passed when it was the way I took it. It was theory, practice, law, and auditing, but they changed it. And when I took it, it wasn't done on the computer. We actually wrote the exam. Excuse Excuse me. And it was exciting when I did pass the exam. I was happy. We celebrated. My mom was still alive. And my parents took me out and my sisters, to a steakhouse. I remember it as if it was yesterday. And, I had like a filet mignon, mashed potatoes, and all that good stuff. And it was an exciting time. And then working was, work. It was career. You're trying to make the best of the situation and trying to learn as best you can. And working with other people. I was shy, so it wasn't so easy for me. And I was very... I got nervous around people who were in more senior positions. And I also got kind of afraid to ask too many questions. I tried to tough it out if I wasn't sure, trying to figure it out myself. But if I couldn't, obviously I had no choice. I would have to go and ask somebody. After a while, I kind of gauged how to go about it. And within the accounting profession, I noticed I jumped around a lot. And I would have rather find one organization and find that it was a good place to work and do that for the rest of my life. But unfortunately, that never happened because I was, going from one job to another job to another. And I guess in accounting, you're supposed to do that because that's the way you learn and get exposed. So, I bounced around too in private accounting and public accounting. And I focused like on taxes. I enjoyed taxes. I also did audits. I'd go to clients. I kind of enjoyed that too. And after a while, I got used to working. And the thing was, I was very shy around girls, and I was thinking maybe I could start dating someone. So I was very depressed when my mom passed away. I was 29 years old, and it was very difficult. Um, I was still living at home with my dad, but it was hard because my dad was now alone. He didn't have his wife anymore, my mom. So it affected him. It affected me too. And my two sisters were already out of the house, so it was just my dad and I. And he unfortunately started drinking again. He always had problems with alcohol. And I was still cross dressing all throughout my working career. And I was doing it in secret. Obviously, I didn't want to tell my dad. So 2 years after my mom had died, I started to get very depressed. Pretty much I was depressed for that 2 year period. And I was also dealing with my transgender issues. So I sought out a therapist who really focused on helping patients who identified as transgender, in my case, male to female. And I went there with the intention of wanting to learn about the whole process of transition and how to get prescribed the hormones I needed. And she led me to believe that we would focus on that. But eventually, we started talking more about meeting someone. So she kind of pushed aside my feelings about being transgender and helped me to focus more on meeting a girl and dating and stuff. She even gave me a phone number to reach out to a girl who I finally had the nerve to call. Because I didn't have much experience dating with girls, so I was pretty shy. But I managed to have the confidence to call, and I spoke with her. She seemed nice, and I drove to Bayside from Long Island, and I picked her up, and I kind of thought she was cute when I first saw her, and Filipino, and we went to a Mr. Bean movie. We went to a restaurant, Applebee's, and then we, after the movie and Applebee's, we walked around the mall, and we spent like about four, maybe 5 hours, and then I took her back to her sister's apartment, and I said, "You want to go out again?" And she said, "Okay." So we started to spend more time together. We both worked. She worked as a live-in at a elderly, affluent couple in Sands Point. So, being that she was in Long Island, I could go visit her. It wouldn't have been easy for me if I had to keep driving to Queens. So it was a better arrangement, and I could visit. And we would go out to the malls. We would go watching movies, pretty much doing similar. What we kind of fell into that. And after a year of dating, we decided to get married. The problem was I didn't have a place of my own. I was still living with my dad, and I didn't think I had enough money to put a down payment on a house. So, you know, my wife and I were living with my dad. We had enough room because my sisters had left. So it was good. You know, my dad was very good with us. And then we had sexual relations, and I'd never had sex before, so it was all new to me. But it turned out that only a couple of times then my wife got pregnant, and she when she got her sonogram, she knew the sex of the child. So was um, I wanted it to be a surprise, but I guess I probed her, and she told me that we were having a boy. So it was exciting. I was the third, Edward the third. So I was thinking, Edward the fourth for my son. But my wife said, no, we're not going to do that. So she said, we'll use Edward in his name, but as a middle name, and we named him Matthew. So when Matthew was born, I still didn't have the financial resources to put a down payment on a house. And we pretty much I spent the money that I did have for a wedding, and that was expensive. We had 100 guests approximately. So being that I did that, I didn't have enough money to come to a house, so I felt maybe we'd have to get an apartment initially. And after living with my dad for a while and Matthew, I decided, based on pressure from my sisters, that I should get a place of my own for my family. So eventually, my sisters even helped get me an apartment in Levittown. And it was an elderly man who lost his wife, and he had an extra part of the house with a door separating his living space and our living space. And he was charging us like $1,400 a month. So I was working, and I was able to afford the monthly rent. The problem was I didn't get any benefit from that, because if you had a mortgage and real estate taxes and interest, mortgage interest, you got the benefit of the deductions. But when you're renting, there are no deductions, so I couldn't itemize. So my refunds weren't as near what it would be if I was itemizing with interest and real estate tax. And we had the apartment for a year, and I was working for a CPA firm at the time. And the partner, who I was pretty good friends with, even though he was the partner, they didn't have like barriers where you felt insecure around upper management. They kind of worked like a family, so it was a different structure than what I was used to. So they always made me feel comfortable, even if it was the partner, because they knew I worked hard and I was a good employee. And the partner convinced me that I should look into buying a house. His wife was a real estate attorney, so she came with me to the closing once we found a place. It was expensive. I didn't conceive of spending over $300,000 for a house because I didn't have the money. Obviously, would have to take out a 30-year mortgage, and that wasn't too appealing for me because I didn't want to be slave to a mortgage, but I had no choice. So 2004, I put down a down payment and obligated myself to a 30-year mortgage, and I was 37 at the time. So no, actually not 37, I was 40. And if you look at it, I'd be 70 still paying off the mortgage, which to me that seemed insane, but I had no choice. So I'm 58 now. So after working for the CPA firm for like 10 years, I had to move on because the partner got upset that I did a client's sales tax return because they fell behind in making payments. So he always curtails the services we provide until they pay and catch up. So I did the mistake of doing the sales tax return, and when he discovered that, he got really angry at me. Now, I didn't think it was such a big deal to get so bent out of shape over, but unfortunately his thinking was different from my thinking. And sadly, I had to part ways with the firm. I was quite shocked about it. But I tried to get him to help me get a job with one of the clients that I used to go to, and he did. I wound up working for one of his clients as an assistant controller, and they were nice. They were an India-based company. India-based company. They had offices in India. They had offices in France. They had offices in China, and they had offices in Boston, Massachusetts, and Connecticut. So I got to go to China one time, France, and I got to see Paris. I went to Boston, and I went to Connecticut. I never got to go to the India office. And that was when it was, I was there for about 2.5 years, and that's when I had this feeling like I wasn't happy with the way I was presenting myself, and did some research, and I sent a text message on my phone to the manager, the office manager who I usually had dealt with, and I said I'm thinking or exploring the possibility of transitioning from male to female. And at first she didn't take it seriously. She didn't think anything of it. But then when I was in the office, I said, look, I'm serious about this, and I'm thinking this would be the best thing for me. But they didn't see it that way. They wouldn't consider me doing that. And so eventually they were trying to accommodate me, but they just said, no, we can't. It's not going to work out. So the firm that I worked with, we still had a relationship despite the fact that they let me go. And so I spoke to the partner and I said, look, I'm transitioning male to female. The employer doesn't want me to do so. So I said, I need to find another position because I'm losing the employment there. So they helped me get a job in New York City where I worked for a doctor, pediatrician who had many locations, offices. And he was from France, entrepreneur, a very brilliant man. And the office manager I spoke to, and she was very accepting of me presenting as a female. So I was excited because it would be the first job that I ever dressed in as a woman, presenting myself as a woman. I didn't do a name change, so my birth name, they had to do all the paperwork and stuff under my birth name of Edward, even though I chose to be called Emily. They would informally address me as Emily, but for the business matters, I was addressed as Edward. Unfortunately, despite the fact that the office manager was good about, she worked with me about that, the owner wasn't too thrilled about it. So they found a way to terminate me after only 7 months there. And that's when everything fell apart. I had a nervous breakdown. I wound up in the hospital. And then they diagnosed me with bipolar disorder. They diagnosed me with severe depression. And they also confirmed the fact that I was transgender based on my conversations. And they agreed that I was male to female transgender. So they hooked me up. Before they could release me, they had to make sure I had aftercare, outpatient treatment. So they hooked me up from Bellevue to Mount Sinai, where I went there for like 3 years. I spoke to a therapist who was consistent. The psychiatrist, I wound up, it was like a revolving door with the psychiatrist. I must have had 4 different psychiatrists, but I only had the one therapist because he was the best. I liked him. And he helped me get the long-term disability through AICPA. And I got in touch through the recommendation of a friend to go to a law firm to help me get Social Security. So I wasn't working. I was waiting for the disability claims, hopefully in my favor, and I only had the small amount of unemployment. So it was hard, you know, and I already had a house, so I was obligated to a mortgage. It was very stressful because I almost lost the house because I couldn't keep up with my payments, so I had to liquidate all my retirement money. I have no savings now, no retirement money to play catch up with the mortgage. And thank God I finally got approved for long term and Social Security. So that helped me again kind of catch up. But it was a far cry from what I used to make, about 100,000 a year. Now I was making 60. The only thing was the 36,000 from long term was not subject to tax, so it kind of made it a little higher than 60. And I was going to the therapist and talking about how I felt. I said I'm transgender, male to female. I have bipolar disorder. I have severe depression. I have a son who's on the autism spectrum. And I'm the one bearing the burden of paying a mortgage and all that stuff. I had all the financial pressures, so I had to divvy up from the salary, the disability income, to appropriate it to all my expenses, including the bulk, which was the mortgage and the real estate taxes. So it wasn't fun. I got too caught up in that and worrying about it so much that I wound up going to hospitals many, many times, just like my mom. And I had some suicide attempts. You know, I didn't think I was going to make it, and I just kept pressing on. I was now living full-time as a woman, couldn't find work, living on my disability, paying all the bills I had to pay, and, you know, raising a child on the autism spectrum is not easy. He's our only child. He's struggling with autism, and unfortunately he had to go to a residential school because he was having behavioral problems in the Levittown schools. So he was 8 hours away for 3 years, and he never forgave me for that. And now he's home, but he's not doing anything. He's not working. He's not in school. He's 20 now. So I'm very worried for him, and I don't know what to do. I was recently in the hospital for a suicide attempt. I overdosed on my medication, and I tried to hang myself also in the hospital when I, you know, knew that it wasn't successful. And then I was unconscious because of the overdose. And I swear, when I read through the medical report when I was released, the psychiatrist kind of was interviewing me, but I was in and out of consciousness, so I don't even remember being interviewed. And then, like a day after she interviewed me, she came by because I was unconscious for 2 days, and I woke up on my birthday. But she said, "You know me, right?" I said, "No, I don't." She came with her colleague, and she goes, "Well, I was interviewing you yesterday, but you were in and out of. You would, wake up when I called Emily, you, and then I would fall back asleep. And she kept calling me. I'd wake up. I'd answer a question. I'd fall asleep. So, and I don't even recall this happening anything like that at all. So when I read through the report, she kind of shocked me. I mean, yeah, I was shocked because she asked me, I don't even remember the question asked or my answer, but she asked me, and it was written down in the report, if I had remorse. And according to the report, she indicated that I had said that my remorse was that I didn't die. And that was weird that I even said something like that. But I believe her because I also attempted to hang myself. So luckily I survived because the nurse caught me in the act, and they had to restrain me to the bed. So I couldn't get anywhere. I couldn't go. And if I had to go to the bathroom, I had to be escorted there. So I've been going through a lot. I'm hoping to get surgery because I had to postpone it twice. Hopefully now it will work out. The problem is I have some health issues now that my doctors brought out that I'm worried about. They said I have a high enzyme count in my liver, so they had to eliminate basically most of my psychotropic medications and antidepressants. And I also have polyps in my gallbladder. I had to do an ultrasound, and that's when they determined all of this, and blood tests. So I'm very nervous about my health issues. I also have very painful arthritis, and I broke my thumb, and it's killing me. I'm hoping, though, that it won't interfere with the surgery. I want to have vaginoplasty, male to female surgery, bottom surgery, and I have a good surgeon. I met with him twice now because the first time was when I was planning to do the second attempt at surgery. Unfortunately, I went through a bad phase, and I don't know what I was thinking, but I was trying to please my family, so I got a short haircut, and my hair had to be dyed back to its original color of brown. And then I had to start wearing men's clothes again, and it was messed up. I couldn't deal with that. After 2 weeks, I ditched the men's clothes and I started wearing women's clothes again, despite the fact that I had a short haircut. I didn't care. I'd much rather dress the way I felt comfortable than wear that stuff. I didn't want that. And so now I'm happier because my hair is growing. Yeah, obviously I want it back to my shoulders like I used to wear it. But at least I can pass as a woman now. And that's really when I couldn't pass before. I felt very depressed. I was very upset with what I did. But I'm doing better now. And, being in 2 hospitals recently, the psychiatric hospital, but before that, the regular hospital to deal with the overdose. I'm feeling better. Still stressed out. And I'm looking forward to doing surgery tentatively in August. Hopefully everything will work out. And I'll get the insurance approval like I did in the past, and get the letters from the therapist and the psychiatrist, and take it from there. So anyway, I'm trying to have a positive outlook on life and focus on my transition and hopefully surgery, and also focus on my son who's really struggling. he's not in school, he's not working, and I'm trying to get him out and doing things. And so hopefully that will eventually work out. And I'll take it from there. So I will continue to do videos. I'm not very popular though. Yeah, I pour my heart and soul into these videos. I'm trying to pass along my own experiences as a male to female transgender woman. You know, and I am quite hopeful that eventually I'll have somebody interested in what I have to say. But I do get somewhat jealous because I see other transgender girls who have channels and, you know, they get like over 20,000 views, whereas my videos only get like 200 views. You know, they get over 800 thumbs ups. I'm lucky if I get 2 or 3. So, and unfortunately, I get a lot of thumbs down for whatever reasons, I don't know. But I'm very sincere when I do my videos. I am very personable. I want to help people, sharing my own personal experiences. And I am very serious about dealing with my own struggles, mentally, physically, and my own transition from male to female. And if I can benefit anyone, help them, I'm grateful. I want to do what I can. Hopefully my experiences I share will help some. You know, you can leave me a comment. Hopefully you give me a thumbs up, because I really want to do something. I also like to write. I am a spoken word artist, but I'm not making anything by doing it. Making pennies, basically. I wish I would have more popularity, but unfortunately I don't. So I just try to do the best I can. And, you know, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook. Unfortunately, they took down my Iannielli page. They said I was copyright infringement just because I did videos where I dance, and I did a soundtrack of a popular music group, you know, and I did that in some videos, and they just took it down. So I'm working on my male page that I set up a year or 2 earlier than I did for my female, but I don't have that anymore, so I just have the male page, and I can't change the name on it from Edward to Emily, so I put in little parentheses, Emily as my transgender name. So I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. And you can always find me if you need to reach out to me. Leave me a comment. You can ask me a question, and I will get back to you. Anyway, this is Emily Iannielli, male to female transgender woman, signing off. I love you guys. Wish you the best. Thank you.